if you're building a no-code app, but you haven't launched yet, should you prioritize the app's development itself or the marketing and promotion of that app in terms of where you invest your money? Which is the priority? Should you spend more on the development of the core product, or should you spend on the promotion of it? This is actually a question that we get a lot. We hear people saying things like, I don't want to build my app until I've raised enough money to market it on the other side. Or I don't want to invest in building my app, so I'm going to cobble something together so that on the other side, I'll still have money for marketing and promotion. Is that the best strategy? Well, honestly, yes and no. It kind of depends. Now, I'm going to break that down and tell you exactly what I mean. But if you're new around here, my name is Kristen, and I'm the co-founder of Coaching No Code Apps. We help business owners and industry experts build custom apps to start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses, all without coding. So, which should you prioritize? Make sure you stick around till the end, because we're going to figure out the answer to this for you and your app. So let's dive in. What I'm going to do is share my screen, and we're going to jump over to the whiteboard. Okay, so there are really two types of people who are building apps. We have entrepreneur number one and entrepreneur number two. Now we're going to go through both of these. We're going to start with entrepreneur number one. So this type of person is building out an app idea. Now, an app idea is usually something that they've come up with and they've thought to themselves, oh, wow, this would be a cool idea, or something along those lines. It's something that, while it might sound neat or cool, it doesn't necessarily have a specific outcome. And what I mean by that is, when you're building an app, you're generally solving a problem of some kind. But sometimes entrepreneurs who build out the cool ideas they come up with aren't actually solving any particular problem. And because of that, there's no outcome that the app itself provides. There's no solution. There is no tangible benefit to a user paying for the app itself. So entrepreneur one is really building out a cool idea that they've come up with. And listen, if this is you, that's okay. We're going to talk about what this means, and then we're going to go into entrepreneur number two and what that can mean from that point of view as well. So the problem is, when you're building out an idea that doesn't produce some sort of tangible result or benefit, it's often not validated. The idea is not validated. Okay, so when your app idea isn't validated, when you don't really know whether or not it's good, you might find yourself asking the questions, will people use my app? Or is my app idea good? How do I tell if my app idea is good? Okay, if you don't have validation for your app, those are the questions that you're asking. And generally, when you're building out a cool idea that doesn't provide some sort of a solution to a problem, it can be hard to validate it and make sure that there's a need for that app idea. So when the app isn't validated, usually what's lying underneath all of this is that there's no target market that has been identified. So usually this type of entrepreneur doesn't really know who their users will be. They find themselves searching for who might need or want their app. They don't have a clear set of potential users who they can reach out to. There's just no clear target market. Now, when there's no clear target market and there's no validation, here's what happens. That person has to invest up front Okay, they have to invest their money up front in things like paid advertising, for example. Maybe they have to run ads, or maybe they have to hire a marketing agency to help them do two things. Number one, they have to figure out who their target market is in the first place. They have to run ads or do some sort of paid marketing to figure out who's even interested in their idea, because they don't have that target market identified. And they have to validate the app idea. If and when they do find those potential users, then they can figure out whether or not those people actually want the app. And so this type of person does have to invest in marketing pretty heavily if they want to find potential success with their app. Now, there's one more piece to this puzzle. What happens after that? After they have invested in that marketing in order to go back and validate their app and figure out who their target market is. Well, once they've done that, either they have to then go and rebuild their app, because if they're not investing in their app's development and they're saving for their marketing, then they've probably pieced something together, their minimum viable product, for example, and they probably have found that they need to rebuild it because they didn't invest in that part of the process up front. Now, if that's not the case, then what they're going to find is that potentially nobody wants the app. After they've gone through that validation and that target market exploration, they might find that their app idea isn't valid. They don't have a target market who would want it. So potentially at the other end of this, there's a really good chance they're either going to need to rebuild their app because they didn't prioritize the development in the first place, or their app idea just isn't valid. So you can see how this process, starting with having a quote unquote cool idea, can lead to a need for investing in that upfront marketing, because there are a lot of missing pieces in place leading up to it. But we have to look to the other side too, because remember, this, whether or not you invest in marketing really depends on your situation. So let's look at entrepreneur number 2. Now, whereas entrepreneur number 1 is building an idea, entrepreneur number 2 is building a solution. Now, this type of person has identified a really specific problem, and they know how they want to solve that problem. So that is what their app idea revolves around. And in reality, it's not really even an idea. It is a solution. It's an app solution. So this is where entrepreneur 2 starts. Now, when they have that solution versus the quote unquote cool idea, usually they have easy validation. Okay, entrepreneur number 1 generally hasn't validated their idea yet, but entrepreneur 2 usually has easy validation for their solution, because often they themselves need that solution within their own business or within their industry. They're thinking things like, this app would save people so much time or so much money, or this app would save me so much time or so much money, etc. There's usually easy validation that goes along with that. Now, to add to that, they usually already have default users. They usually already have default users. So whereas the first entrepreneur generally doesn't know who their target market is, they don't know even who to market the app to in the first place, entrepreneur 2 usually has a set of default users. Now, this is a topic we could do a deep dive into, and we're not going to go fully into that today. This is something we actually cover with our private clients. But usually when you have the solution and you have that easy validation, it's really easy to identify those first users who you're going to bring on board your app. Now, when you have that easy validation and those default users, you don't need upfront marketing investment. Okay, you don't need to prioritize your budget towards the marketing. You don't need to wait to spend any money until after you have that product, for example, because you have, number one, those default users. You already know who you need to reach out to come on board your app. You don't have to spend the money to get those early users on board because you already have access to them, right? You don't have to run these big paid campaigns when you move into those beta testing phases, for example. You just need to reach out to the default users who you already have lined up. And you already have that easy validation. So you don't need to spend that marketing money in order to even validate your app in the first place because it's already been validated. So again, there's, one more piece to this puzzle, and it's that when you have this solution and you have this easy validation, you have your default users, you don't need to spend money in order to start generating that revenue, right? You can start quickly. You can start quickly. What can you start quickly? Well, you can start generating a revenue really quickly because you already have access to those default users and you can start charging them right off the bat before you ever spend money on marketing. You can start growing your app quickly. You can start expanding your app quickly because you already have those default users who you can start getting that critical feedback from right away. You can start scaling your app quickly. And what happens then? Well, if you could start scaling quickly, you can start growing quickly, you can start generating revenue quickly, all of those things. Well, then you can take that money and you can take that progress, you can invest it back into marketing. You don't need to do so up front. You can take the money that you're generating after that and reinvest it back into that app-based business that you're now building. So, should you save money for your marketing, or should you prioritize the development? Should you not even build your app until you have money saved up for marketing? Or again, should you just start with the development and move forward with it as quickly as you can? Well, this is kind of like saying, I need a car so that I can commute to my job and make money, so that I can commute to the grocery store and stop ordering so much takeout. But I don't want to buy a car until I have enough money for a Ferrari. So I'm just going to hold off. Okay. Versus I need a car so I can commute to my job and make more money because I want to buy a Ferrari. I need to be able to go to the grocery store so I can save money on all this takeout. But what I'm going to do right now is buy a cheap used car so that I can start making that money now, saving that money now, and then I'm going to upgrade as I go until I get that Ferrari. Right? You can see the difference here. The end goal is the same, but the path to get there is so much different. So should you save? Should you prioritize for marketing? Or should you prioritize development? Many people do choose to prioritize the marketing and the promotion side of things, but it's typically because they don't have that easy access to their users or their validation. It's usually because they don't have those pieces in place. So really, needing to save money for the marketing is actually pointing to a deeper problem. And that is that you have an idea and not a solution. Okay, so the reality is you just don't need paid advertising to start generating a revenue early on. You just don't. Now, you can choose to prioritize that, but you don't need to. Now, you might have read in the past that you do. You might have this kind of ingrained in you that you have to do it that way, but you just don't. You can start generating revenue early, and then you can turn around and reinvest that into your marketing rather than prioritizing it up front. Now, understanding who your default users are, so you can bring them on board early, and building that solution versus the idea that we've talked about. That's what we help our own entrepreneurs do every single day. Now, if you want to learn more about that process, we run a program where we take these entrepreneurs from their solution stage to having their minimum viable product that they can start quickly with. If you want to learn more about that and whether it would be a good fit for you and your app as well, you can head to coachingnocodeapps.com/apply. You'll schedule a free strategy call, send over some details, and we'll start the conversation from there. All right, I hope that was helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk soon.